Good evening. It's 6 o'clock on Monday, October 16th. I'm calling to order our Town of Rutland Select Board and Board of Public Works. We are meeting in the lower level of the Rutland Public Library. We're live on Zoom, and we're being live broadcast, I think, on local access television, as well as recorded for future airing on local access television, YouTube, and other social media avenues. We will go right into the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we're a full 5-member board in person tonight. Thank you all. I feel like we've been seeing a lot of each other and I appreciate it as well. Austin, Tamika, and the staff that's been supporting us throughout the past few weeks and always. Going right in, I would take a motion to approve treasury warrant and payroll.
Make a motion to approve treasury warrant 24-8 and payroll 24-PW8.
Motion, is there a second? Second. Austin, anything of note? Any questions, comments on treasury warrant or payroll? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call. Harry.
Second, aye.
Matt's and I recuse myself from cable activities.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin, I excluding safe place.
Thank you. We have a few sets of minutes. We have, so I think I would prefer to do them one at a time. I think, because Tom, I think you were absent for the October 2nd meeting.
Okay.
And then everybody was for the 11th. And then we have the executive sessions that I think was recommended that they would be approved but not released at this point. So I would take a motion to approve the October 2nd minutes. This is excluding Tom.
I'll make a motion to approve the October 2nd, 2023 minutes as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Questions, comments, concerns, edits?
Second, aye.
Matt's and I.
Ledger, I.
Galvin, recusing myself.
Whitman, aye. Thank you, Tamika. I would take a motion to approve the October 11th meeting minutes. This is for the bylaw review.
Make a motion to approve meeting minutes October 11th, 2023. And October 11th, 2023 executive minutes,
Not to be released at this time.
not being released at this time.
I'll second.
So that's for both the regular minutes and the executive session to approve but not release at this time. Is there any questions, comments, concerns about the regular minutes? Any questions, comments, concerns about the executive session? If so, I would hold those until we had our next executive session to approve them.
That's good.
We're okay to go
Yeah.
tonight? Approve everything and not release?
Yeah.
Okay, alright.
Second, aye.
Matt's and I.
Ledger, I.
Galvin, I.
Whitman, aye. Thank you, Tamika and Jen, for those minutes. I appreciate it. Going into member comments and announcements, I just wanted to thank the Devereux School for their wonderful breakfast that they had a couple weeks ago. I unfortunately couldn't attend, but I appreciate that they do that and the collaboration that they have with our town departments. This past, actually yesterday, I think was the Hope Lives Here Remembrance Walk and 5K. I was unable to attend, I was running soccer, but it looks like it was a very well attended event, and I know that that's one of the kind of beloved events of the town, so thank you. We have some Halloween fun coming up. Looking out, the library has a Halloween activity and an authors event October 28th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. here at the library. The town departments and businesses and individuals are putting on a trunk or treat here at the center of town around the Common, October 31st, on Halloween, from 4 to 7 p.m. It's to coincide with trick or treat and everything. The events committee is hosting a photography and exhibit and fibers arts showcase. Their theme is Rutland Then and Now. They have an information and the application on the town website. So if it's something you're interested in participating in, the information can be found there, or reach out to the events committee. And I just wanted to take a moment and reiterate to all of us here, to the public, to boards and commissions, our employees are hard workers and they have a job to do and they're doing their job. And I think it's really disrespectful when people come in, and I understand emotions can run high, but when they come in and are disrespectful to our employees and not showing them the respect, the common courtesy that I think a lot of us expect and hope to have. These are, a lot of our employees are town residents. They live here, their kids, their families live here, they go to school here, they're involved in the community. And it's really disheartening to hear when the public or people doing business in town are not respectful of and even boards and commissions are not respectful of the employees that we're paying to do a job. And so I just wanted to kind of reiterate that hopefully we can have some common decorum and courtesy going forward. I understand there's always disagreements and emotions can run high, but there needs to be a level of respect, both from the employees but also to the employees. So I just wanted to say that I think it's been a little rough for employees recently. So, thank you. Not to end on such a sad note, but anybody else have any comments or? So we'll move right into public comment then. Is there anyone here for public comment? Anyone on Zoom for public comment? Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
Tom Rashala. I'm here for Rutland Post 310. I just wanted, I think you have this in your packet of information there. We've scheduled a dedication ceremony for the new plaque that's on the memorial out front. And I'm sure most of you know, and if you don't, well, you probably heard about it. That project started out as a Boy Scout Eagle project. Liam Dearden came up with a project, and it was removing the old shrubs that were overgrown, cleaning up around the monument. We put in a bunch of pavers, as you know, and part of his project was to get started on honoring the service members from Rutland that were serving during the War on Terror. So that's the plaque that's out there right now. The names on that plaque are from August of 91 to August of 21. And there is room for additional names. That obviously this thing's still going on, so it's gonna, I hope it doesn't fill up, but there's room for more names, unfortunately. But so what we wanted to bring to your attention was on Veterans Day, which is Saturday, the 11th, we're gonna have a ceremony out front to dedicate the plaque to those, to the town, but for the people that are listed on there. And, like we've done for the World War I monument, and we did do one ceremony for the monument when meaning Liam finished his work there a couple of years ago. But this process of getting the names vetted and make sure we had them as correct as we possibly could, it took way longer than we thought it was going on. But here we are, we finally got it done, so. Hope you can come if we would like someone to speak from the board, if you choose that, and Austin also probably, maybe a few words, but short, few words. I don't know if you got any questions or not. I'll answer them if I can, but that's it. I just want to make sure you knew about it, and hope, like I said, I hope everybody can be there and honor those veterans that are on that plaque.
Thank you, Tommy, and thank you for you and the American Legion Post, as well as Veterans Agent and Liam and everyone involved in it, because I know it was a much bigger process than originally anticipated to do the work to get the names. So thank you for all that time and effort, and thank you for inviting us. We we'll make sure to add it and have representation. Thank you.
It's on the board out front, and again, if anybody wants any more of these posters to put up, I have some more to, if you'd like some, and get them out wherever you can get them.
Have the families whose names are on the plaque been notified of it, or?
Well,
not
they
yet?
will be in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Yes, do you have the copy of the letter that's going to the
Yes.
veterans and their
family, yeah.
families? So,
Yep.
we
Thank you.
happen to come up with another, we're trying to think of maybe other people to send letters to, but it's such a massive project.
Yeah.
I think if we get past this next one with
Yeah.
what we can do, and then, advertise it,
Right. Maybe we can
is
do
what
an
we're gonna be able to do, so.
email blast and stuff too. But do you know, I think Liam had gone away to school. I'm not sure if he's around or his family, if we can extend an invite to.
Bill Critchley's been in contact with them already, talked to him, right, we haven't heard back yet if William's gonna be able to come back or not, but whatever, I mean, his family is aware of it, he's aware of it.
Yep.
So Bill is in contact with them.
Perfect. I figured so, but I just,
Yep.
Jeff was kind of the liaison when he was on the board here, and that's been a number of years, so, thank you. Anyone? Yeah, Harry, go ahead.
Can I ask how many names are on that list?
I do, but I
Approximately.
can't think of it right at the moment, I don't know off the top of my head.
More than 10?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, you can see you got the picture right there, right?
Yeah.
There's 3 columns of, what's it, 25 or 32 a column, there's 3 columns of names, so
Okay.
there's quite a few names there. And we do have a couple we've already heard that we have to add, so there's gonna be a couple more added to the bottom fairly soon, but
I guess Rutland has done its share.
it has.
And this memorial, I mean, Liam and the Post and everyone did a lot of work on this memorial previously also to bring it up as well for the representation of the other wars as well. So this was kind of a recent missing piece, so
And
thank
thanks
you
to
for
the
all that work.
Post.
Thank you,
And if
Tommy.
anybody's, I always add with this, if you're a veteran, you don't belong to the post, please join. Our numbers are dwindling, so,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Hearing none, we can go into the town administrator update.
Oh, sorry, Madam Chair. Just let me put up my slides.
I know we're moving quicker than I anticipated. In come the floodgates of like.
Part of my update is ARPA funds, so I'm wondering if you'd be willing to take 5B out of order, the presentation from Weston and Sampson. And though we have some guests here tonight that will be doing a presentation.
I'm okay with that as a board amenable since we have Weston and Sampson and Chris here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep.
Great, so just to start off, I think this board, or, well, especially this board, I think, while you weren't in office, you were certainly aware that for several years now, we've had some requirements with stormwater or MS4, and I'll let the presenters explain what MS4 means. But we have stormwater requirements to the federal and state government. So much so that at the previous town meeting, we established a stormwater enterprise fund. At this upcoming fall town meeting, we're asking to fund that enterprise fund. So we thought it was prudent for Weston and Sampson, our town engineers, to present exactly what the requirements of MS4 and stormwater and the permit that the town has. So we have Pat Cotton and Jerry Schwartz from Weston and Sampson, and also Director of Public Works, Chris Kolofsky, to talk a little bit about stormwater and also answer any questions the board may have. Turn it over to you guys.
Absolutely. My name is Jerry Schwartz. I'm with Weston and Sampson. And thank you so much.
Hold on just 1 minute, Jerry. Peter, the audio is really bad in here.
It really doesn't sound like that.
wanna try talking again, Joey? Sorry.
Sure, yeah, is that any better?
Nope, you're still, nope.
Think it might help if I get her on cell phone?
Yeah, Therese, maybe if you did the call-in option, if you have a phone available.
Yeah, do that right now.
And I don't remember the code to unmute. It's star from a phone.
Star 6, star 9. I think they can
Okay.
unmute from the back as well.
Okay.
See, he spoke too soon.
I know. You jinxed us, guys, sorry.
There she is.
Juries, hold on, it must be our speaker here. Give me. No, it's not okay.
No.
Sounds like a politician talking. Do you want to, let me introduce you to them so I know who you are? Okay,
That's unusual.
ready? I was just waiting for 1 minute to see what this is gonna say.
Try 2 or 3 things too.
I mean, easier too, right?
So I don't know for sure where the problem is. I can't even be sure it's inside this building. The most I can do is to restart the Zoom.
I can share the slides if you want, Pat, if you wanna take the lead on chatting.
Yeah, I can talk to them, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Joris, we're having audio sound issues here, so I think we're gonna try to do it here. Peter may try restarting the Zoom, so I'm not sure if you'll get kicked off and then need to rejoin or not. I'm not sure if that's his plan. Sorry.
Right now, is that correct?
Correct. I think that's what you said.
You're like very mumbo jumbled. The audio's not coming through cleanly. So I think Austin has the slides he's gonna share and maybe Pat's gonna try to go through them.
Yep.
I'm not sure if Peter's gonna restart the Zoom. If so, then you might need to rejoin. Otherwise, I think you'll listen and maybe type in the chat. I don't know. Does that work?
Sure, yeah,
Okay.
I can absolutely run through it.
Alright, sorry.
No,
Thank
no
you.
problem at all.
I feel bad, I mean, both of you are here, and so you have a plan and then to.
Exactly, well, this was the backup plan, so here we go. All right, well, thanks for having us. So we did, as Austin had mentioned, we did wanna talk about, surface water quality improvements through the MS4, permit compliance within the town of Rutland. So, next slide, please. So in general, we're going to talk about the MS4 permit background, the 2016 MS4 permit requirements, and the status of the town's compliance, and then the steps moving forward, as far as maintaining compliance and then gaining compliance with the permit itself. So a little bit of background on the MS4 permit, just so that to brief everyone that doesn't know exactly what the MS4 is. So it's a municipal separate storm sewer system, all man-made stormwater collection and conveyance infrastructure owned by a municipality or public entity. So that consists of basically anything drainage, from pipes to manholes to catch basins, outfalls, culverts, man-made channels, swales, infiltration, retention basements, and treatment structures. So when we say MS4, that's what we're referring to, the drainage system. So it's basically any point where stormwater can enter the collection system and where it discharges to surface waters or wetlands. Next slide, please. So the intent of the MS4 permit is generally to improve receiving water quality and restore designated uses of the public water supplies. So stormwater is the number one cause of water quality impairments in Massachusetts. For a little historical background as far as the MS4 permit is concerned, it goes back to the Clean Water Act, and then the NIPD's permit, and then the federal permit. And then the original MS4 permit was issued back in 2003. It was initially intended just for 5 permit year cycles, but it ended up running for 13 years, much longer than anticipated before the actual new permit became effective on July 1, 2018. So the 26, and that was due to a lot of public comment and a bunch of other things that just caused for delays. So in 2016, the permit was administrative continued, so the 250 plus municipalities in Massachusetts are required to obtain coverage. Next slide, please. So there's quite a bit of difference between the old 23 MS4 permit and then the 2016 permit now that is in effect. So there's much more accountability for each community, many more detailed requirements and stricter timeframes, much more documentation, enhanced reporting requirements, and more prescriptive requirements for impaired water. So all of this adds to a lot more costs. The 2003 permit was a very general permit that it was a pretty easy lift, whereas now there's a lot more sampling, mapping, a lot more effort that's involved. There's not much funding available. It's difficult for every community. There are many communities that have established stormwater enterprise funds to help fund these projects because there's no real funding mechanism aside from establishing one. There are some grants out there, but they're limited at this point. I think the best that, I know ARPA funds can be used for some portions of it, but for the main part, it's a struggle for many communities to comply with these because it's unfortunately not cheap. to meet all these requirements.
Can I ask a quick, brief, kind of novice question?
Absolutely, for sure.
Where's the federal versus the state delineation? Is most of this coming from the federal or is most of this coming from the state?
It's federal and state,
Okay.
so basically on when you get into the federal part, fines can be enforced. Whereas through EPA, US EPA, whereas Mass DEP can't enforce fines, but they can enforce the regs. So, unfortunately, this is enforceable, and if not in compliance, fines can be issued and consent orders can be issued as well, if communities are not in compliance.
Thank you.
So essentially, every year in September, a report is due at the end of September. And it covers everything for all the requirements due in that permit year. So on September 28th this year, we submitted a report on the town's behalf. Worked very closely with Chris and his team, and also with help from Austin. The DPW does a ton of work in-house to do the best that they can to keep in compliance with the permit. Might be slightly a little bit behind at this point, but definitely the town's putting their best foot forward to do everything they can with the budget they have now to maintain compliance. So as far as the regulated area is concerned, as you can see on the map, that the urbanized area, which is the regulated area, as defined by 2000 and 2010 census data, is the MS4 discharges to waters of the US. So just about every town in Massachusetts contains urbanized area, even Rutland, which means compliance, it's required to be in compliance with the MS4 permit. So as shown on the map, you can see clearly the areas that are designated as urbanized areas. Rutland also discharges to water of the United States, lakes, rivers, ponds, wetland areas, and to the ocean. So discharges to the waters of the United States are regulated under this permit. So in regards to Rutland's MS4 permit, there are about a little over 1,000 catch basins townwide, about 50 regulated stormwater outfalls. Further mapping efforts are required to properly inventory the MS4, but the town has definitely put significant effort into mapping outfalls thus far, and are catching up every year to make sure they meet the requirements. So as far as the 2016 MS4 permit, we'll review the requirements and then the status of compliance with the requirements. So there are 6 minimum control measures that are listed. One is public education and outreach. That can be anything from pamphlets that are released maybe at DPW if residents come in, or at town hall, maybe having some small group meetings at town hall, things like of that nature. Public participation and involvement. In the past, there had been even with some of the Boy Scouts that used to go and mark catch basins in the past, so items like that. Illicit discharge detection and elimination, which is essentially if you get a positive hit for bacteria when you're sampling at an outfall, chasing it back to locate that source where the connection exists and eliminate it from the system. Construction site runoff control, so basically, and then post-construction runoff control, which are essentially bylaws that monitor construction within town to make sure that the appropriate runoff control measures are being enforced on construction projects within the town. And then, of course, pollution prevention and just general good housekeeping so that everybody knows what their role is to maintain compliance with the. So the town submitted the notice of intent in September 2018, and was authorized to discharge, was granted by EPA in April 2019. So there's a copy that shows the approval letter, approval of the original notice of intent. So part of this, the MS4 compliance is a stormwater management plan, and that includes all responsible parties. An in-depth review of minimum control measures outlined in the notice of intent and compliance measures, and this is updated every year. So the progress to date, it was drafted and last updated in 2019. It meets some of the requirements. Complete updates by June 30th, 2024 are ongoing, and then annual updates will be required moving forward every year as things progress. So moving back to the public education and outreach piece, so 8 targeted meshes over the 5-year permit. So there are essentially 4 audiences, residents, businesses, developers, and industrial facilities. Additional requirements for nitrogen impaired waters, the Long Island Sound nitrogen TMDL, so 3 annual messages, grass clippings, slow release fertilizers, pet waste, leaf litter, disposal, and available resources, which I'm pretty sure are free, that you can obtain, as you see on the right there, just for a public notification, is through Think Blue Massachusetts and the Central Mass Regional Stormwater Coalition, which I believe the town did have a member that was a member of the coalition, so I think we're looking to get someone back on the coalition as well. It's a good public resource that provides a lot of free information to help keep things in order with the permit, help keep everyone up to speed. Additional public participation and involvement. So to provide public review of a stormwater management plan and annual reports to the select board and on the town website. There's just an example on the right here of the Wachusett Earth Day, and then special collections and the Wachusett Regional Recycling Center. So opportunities again for public participation, such as hotlines, cleanup teams, monitoring teams, and so on. And then the additional commitments, like I had mentioned, with the special collections there at the and then Watershed Regional Recycling Center. So as far as Rutland is concerned, with the IDDE bylaw, it was adopted in November 2018. The MS4 mapping, phase 1 updates were due on June 2019, and phase 2 updates in June 2028. The written IDDE plan was due on June 2019. Catchment delineation ranking was due on June 2019. Dry weather outfall screening and sampling was completed in June 2023. The catchment investigation and wet weather outfall sampling is due in June 2028, and then the in-house training is annually. When we are written, if we state was due, unfortunately, these items have not been completed to date, so there's additional effort that will be required to make sure that the town gets up to speed. With this, we submitted the permit noting that the town is putting their best foot forward to get up to speed with these items, and will hopefully do so within the next coming permit year. So with the construction and post-construction site runoff control, so regulatory updates include site inspection and enforcement of erosion control measures. Again, as I had stated before, for private and public construction projects, just making sure the proper environmental controls are in place, and monitored during construction. Basically, waste control requirements are being met for construction site operators, site plan review, inspection, and enforcement procedures as they're submitted through the planning board and the process, the approval process that they're getting looked at and commented on efficiently and in accordance with the bylaws that haven't been implemented yet. Post-construction management on new development and then redevelopment sites. So these updates and procedures were required to be complete by June 30th, 2019 and June 30th, 2021. So they have been drafted, they just have not been updated and adopted yet as bylaws. Post-construction stormwater management, so street design and park lots report. This was something that was due in June 2022. Also a green infrastructure report and then a BMP, which is best management practice retrofit inventory report, was also due in June of 2022. Pollution prevention and then good housekeeping. Some other items, inventory and O&M procedures for municipalities and activities. Again, that was due in June 2020. Catch basin cleaning for any catch basins, essentially if you look into a catch basin and the sump's over 50% full, those need to be cleaned on an annual basis. Electronic inspection form and catch basin cleaning optimization plan, sweeping of streets and municipal lots, that is completed annually. Inspection and maintenance of the best management practices, it's an annual requirement. Stormwater pollution prevention plan at the DPW facility, this was due on in June 2020, and then quarterly SWIP inspections and training. SWIP is just an abbreviation for stormwater pollution plan, prevention plan, and those are due. The training is annual for those. So for the impaired waters, the approved TMDL is a Long Island Sound for nitrogen, additional public education and outreach initiatives, general messages about the grass clippings and the slow release fertilizers that I previously mentioned, pet waste message regarding proposal, proper disposal of leaf litter, regulatory updates, good housekeeping practices, nitrogen source identification report, phases 1 and 2, and then a demo project as well. Are basically what is approved for the requirements in the town for the Long Island Sound nitrogen TMDL. So as far as records and reporting go, basically the annual reports are due at the end of every September. We need to document, everything needs to be documented. And comprehensive records are extremely important. They're looking for the details, as you can see, as I've discussed through all these requirements here, is that it's not just an easy lift here. There's a lot of work that goes into this, as required by the federal government. So we suggest, understanding and taking credit for all that you do, which is a lot. Chris and his team, they do a ton with the staff that they have. And it goes a long way. Everything that you can do in-house is great, and taking credit for that. So, and then moving away from paper, so we definitely recommend having some of the electronic forms, whether it be on an iPad or even an Excel spreadsheet, just to kind of get rid of the paper so that you have everything electronically. Kind of streamlines things for reporting and things like that, and it makes everything easier for the annual reporting that's due at the end of September. So for some recent updates and then next steps, so year five was, as I had mentioned, was submitted on September 28th. The town's looking to begin tasks to help move forward to compliance by the end of permit year 6, which is June 30th, 2024. So essentially, everything should be completed by June 30th, 2024, And then between June 30th and September 28th, the report is compiled. That's essentially how the year, the schedule works as far as completing the work. There is some forgiveness here and there if everything isn't completed by June 30th. Typically, as long as you're moving forward and doing the best that you can to try to get there. Between June 30th and September 28th, if it gets done. I'm not saying this happens all the time, but as long as you show that you're doing everything that you can to get there, it'll likely, and it's included in the report, it will likely be accepted again. It all depends on the EPA and, you know, how strict they are with review to their reports, but they understand that they know that the town's doing everything that they can with the funding that they currently have to try to maintain compliance with this, that the town does care. And they are aware of this, so. Again, keeping comprehensive records, documenting everything, and then move on to electronic data. So there is a plan in place that has been drafted and sent to Chris and his team in Austin for review. And then once approved, everybody's ready to move forward and make sure everything's up to speed to get into compliance with everything that may be deficient at this point. So, again, a lot of great things are being done, unfortunately due to funding, slightly behind, but we know the items that we are behind on and what needs to be done to get up to speed. So, I guess with that, I will leave it up to any questions.
Thank you for the presentation and thank you for Weston and Sampson as well as Chris and DPW. I know it's been an ongoing thing for, I think since I first joined the board, Gary was talking about it. So I know it's not, do you think that the biggest obstacle is funding?
Yes, 100%. There is no doubt about that, and every community is facing it. Yeah.
What is the, I'm just trying to understand, what's the largest expense? Like what?
As far as the items go,
Yeah.
it's all, I think it all, if you go through the bulleted items, you know, the annual reporting is not a big lift. It's more like the field related exercises like the inspections and the sampling, and, you know, developing the
maps.
the mapping, the plans to move forward. The electronic inspection forms aren't really even too heavy of a lift, so yeah, it's a lot of the more field related data collection type items are a lot, and then the sweeping and then all the items as far as the catch basin cleaning, all that adds up as well pretty quick.
Through the chair, so it's really manpower,
Yeah,
not
yep.
having the employees to get it done, is that pretty much?
Yeah, and it
Definitely part of it.
it's part of it, and then as far as, you know, the resources that you have, I mean, you do sweep the streets every year. You do look at the catch basins and, you know, back them out as necessary. So there are a lot of things, again, that are getting done. That's just a long list of things that just still remain. But we're moving forward, or the town is moving forward in the right direction. Especially with the sampling, because EPA had reached out to the town regarding the sampling. We got right out there and got them the results within a couple months and submitted that so that the town was in compliance under that item, because they had expressed some concern on that, so.
Through the chair?
Go ahead.
If I'm understanding this correctly, the overall object of this is to improve the quality of water overall?
Correct.
But I saw no mention of fertilizers there, unless I missed it.
Nope, there was, so that would be included in the, when all the outfalls are sampled, that is one of the parameters that is sampled for. So we do dry weather and wet weather samples, so if there's a, you know, wet or dry, if there's a hit, then that's when that whole IDDE plan comes in and you chase it back to interconnection points to try to determine where it's coming from and eliminate it. So yes, that is included.
And once you find out where that is, then how do you go about correcting it?
Well, depending on what the source is, let's say, for example, something I could think about, maybe there was some sort of agriculture, a field that they were treating with chemicals that weren't approved. And that was leaching into some sort of a catch basin, maybe you got a heavy storm, you got some washout, it ran into a catch basin. What you would do is, once it was determined where that was, that owner of that property would receive a letter that they weren't in compliance and that they would need to perform the correct preventative maintenance and install erosion controls to make sure that that doesn't happen moving forward.
Okay, I guess I was thinking more of something in a large, like a golf course, for example.
Yeah, same thing, exactly,
Okay.
yep.
So they have certain requirements, how much fertilizer they put down at this point? Or no?
I'm not sure as far as golf courses are concerned, I mean, everything is regulated at this point, so any outfalls on golf courses that discharges to any of the waters, within the Commonwealth, are subject to any of the other conditions that any other outfall is just off of the street.
So your testing is really from outfalls like streams, pipes, things like that?
Yep, so anything that discharges directly to a stream or a culvert, at culverts, any essentially outfalls, which is a pipe, typically it's a pipe or drainage shaped structure that you'll see. Sometimes they come out of abutments, you can see them flowing, so essentially the low points that hit the public water supply.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So part of the documentation is quite literally going to each outfall and noting if there's any materials and I think we're taking photos now, right, and documenting
Oh, yeah,
everything?
yep.
And submitting that as part of our report, so is that an annual requirement that we have to do?
That is an annual requirement, yes, wet and dry weather. So essentially with the dry weather, if an outfall is flowing when it's dry, it's either naturally occurring groundwater or there could be an illicit connection. So, if it hasn't rained for 72 hours, and you go out and something is flowing, and in general, typically, it's either one of the two.
I noticed on a previous slide, we had 50 outfalls.
Yes, that's what we have right now, and counting. They haven't all been, there are a few that need to be added.
Can you give the board an example of one of those outfalls?
Of an outfall?
Yeah.
So I guess I could think of, probably one would be, I know there's one out behind DPW.
Yeah, right here, this parking lot drains into this retention pond, runs down through the pipe, it's an outfall, it comes out down below by the stone wall.
Okay,
And then it runs back into another pipe, goes into another system, and comes out down below by the ball field into a retention pond. Those are all considered outfalls.
okay, thank you.
And is it part of the plan for any of that enforcement, if we find any of those issues, how the town is expected to handle that?
As far as if there are positive
Yeah.
hits, the requirement would be to perform the IDDE investigations in an attempt to locate it.
Well, but once we do, addressing that with whomever the owner of the property is or whoever is
Yeah.
causing that issue, is that part of what needs to be in the plan, is how the town is expected to
Yes,
handle all of that?
yeah,
as well?
there will be a procedure in there for that.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, is that something that in terms of some of the bylaws that weren't adopted, we would probably put some language in there in terms of an enforcement authority from the local level?
Absolutely. Yep.
Do you find that most cities and towns have stormwater management sit with DPW, with select board, with planning board? How are a lot of this, especially the smaller communities, handling the stormwater management?
Well, there are many communities that have a stormwater utility to fund it, so the bylaws in general kind of will govern the three bylaws. And then starting at the planning board level for new construction, right? And then the urbanized area as a whole, and just maintaining compliance. And then all the additional requirements within each of those, as part of the urbanized area as well, so.
So it's really kind of multifaceted.
It's multifaceted, yes, yep, so it's everybody working together to make sure to educate people, to make sure the contractors that are building new construction around are keeping things up to standard, and making sure that the stormwater runoff prevention controls are in compliance with the way that they should be, and everything along those lines as well.
Thank you.
Would the periodic I&I studies that get run on wastewater, would that also be part of the equation?
Yeah, that's separate, but it's a good question, right? So a lot of the pipe in town is vitrified clay, which is older clay pipe. There's a lot of AC pipe as well, asbestos clay, 10-foot joints. Those are pretty solid pipes. And then I believe there's definitely some cast iron and reinforced concrete as well. So the majority of the system, I think, is asbestos cement and vitrified clay. So in response to your question, yes, I mean, the water infiltrates, but does it exfiltrate? Absolutely, it could, depending on the type of pressure within the pipes, especially with force mains. As well that are getting older with time as well. So that, yeah, we've seen them coincide as well. I mean, you could have someone that didn't know, let's say they were putting a house in, 40 years ago, and there's two pipes that run down the street and they didn't know, and they connected it to the drain line by mistake. It's not always intentional, it's not always on purpose. Accidents happen.
Okay, thank you.
What do you see going down the road for changes to the stormwater management policy by the state or the feds? I mean, are we doing today what is today, and then we're gonna be blindsided 5 years down the road? And like, we're not doing enough that we should be going down the road? So a question on that.
So the permit is pretty clear right now at this point. So you're in year 6, so through year 10. And then I believe things will be reevaluated. So I think it's pretty clear what's been laid out through year 10, which would basically put us through, call it 2028. But then once everything gets reevaluated, we're not sure at that point, unfortunately. But for now, we do know for the forecast for the 10 years anyways, what we anticipate to come out as far as the regs are concerned.
The reason I ask is trying to put a long-range forecast.
Yes.
It's like, all of a sudden we're okay, and now we got another 200,000 a year facing us trying to fix this stuff.
Yes. Yep, and again, with as with any, federal and state regulations, it's really unknown exactly how stringent it could be, but we do have a solid handle on through year 10 what the requirements will be.
Okay, thank you,
think-
Mr. Cotton.
I think there's a comment. Austin, can you read it?
Yeah, sure, just for Jerice had mentioned with respect to enforcement, our existing IDDE bylaw does give us the authority to conduct tests on private property.
Okay. Whose expense?
Jerice, do you have that answer?
Good question, yeah.
Well, if we're conducting the test, I think that's the point of presenting this tonight is allocating some funding or asking for some funding for this utility to have, whether it's staff or contracting out those services for the enforcement, so that's just the inspection. I mean, whatever we find, I don't know if the town has the ability to levy any fines for illegal discharges. That's something I don't know.
Well, once it's determined, if it was reported, and Jerice, please correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but if it was, once it's reported to DEP and EPA, then EPA has the authority to fine.
So she mentioned there is enforcement provisions in the existing bylaw. She also mentioned that the existing permit is expired but administratively continued We're waiting on a new draft permit, and there will be more of a focus on implementing stormwater best management practices.
Okay. My reason was, if it's required by federal law and state law to do these testings, then can that requirement of testing, the cost of it, be shifted to the person if, or that entity, if it's found out they have greater numbers than they're supposed to have? That was my question.
Did Juries have a response to that? So Juries, I guess the question would be, if it was determined that a specific private property was found non-compliant discharging to the MS4, could they be fined and would they be required to pay for, well, they would be required to pay for the disconnection, but who would be paying for the sampling and inspection charges, I guess, for that? I think that's a question, Therese.
The testing is related to finding out the source of the illicit discharge. They could pay fines to the town.
Okay.
Thanks, Therese.
I don't know if this is Chris or you or Austin, but is there, I understand that it's a multi-department, a lot of people are involved, but is there, obviously we fell down, there's a lot that hasn't taken place. Is there one particular person that is kind of responsible for oversight on making sure that we do get this in place and that things continue to get done the way they should be?
I think quite frankly, it's been a funding issue for years. I mean, I know there was a lot of legality back before 2018, back and forth between EPA and DEP and everything. So a lot of cities and towns just kind of sat back and wanted it to play out legally. And then it was the funding piece, as far as there's no funding.
Well, and which I can understand to a point for things like doing the testing and whatnot, but you said the current policy we have is only a draft. It's not even, we don't even have actual bylaws. I mean, that's not anything that takes
There's just one.
funding, so how come we don't even have that?
Yeah, the only one we have is the IDD, whatever it is,
Yep.
bylaw. But I think there's at least 2 or 3 other bylaws that I think were presented in draft form. Unfortunately, they were never placed on a warrant for town meeting. So, in terms of answering your question, I think it is multifaceted, right? I mean, presenting something to town meeting and informing the voters about it, but then also once they are, in place, making sure that staff, whether it is through the Department of Public Works or if we do decide to contract out those services, just making sure that we're keeping in compliance. So I think it is multifaceted in terms of who's responsible ultimately. But certainly, whether it's the select board, me, Chris, you do not want the US EPA calling.
Right.
Especially on your second day of work.
Speaking from experience.
Yeah.
Through the chair.
Yeah.
Chris, do you have any comments on this? You have any thoughts? I mean, you're the people that are out in the field basically doing this, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Well, some of it, I mean, we can't do the testing, we don't have the stuff, we have to hire that out. And the budget for it so far has been
nothing.
next to nothing, so. The sweeping, we do the sweeping, but we have an old sweeper, it's broken half the time now, and we try to catch the catch basins cleaned as often as we can, but that didn't get done last year, and I've been trying to get a hold of the company and they won't even call me back, so I don't know if these companies are just so busy, they're not interested, I don't know. But,
I mean, you had put into CIPC for a new sweeper, or a newer used sweeper, whatever.
yeah, that price is for a new used sweeper.
Okay, and nothing's happened there yet. I mean, we approved it, but you haven't gotten one yet.
Yeah, I don't know, that was before me.
Okay,
I think it comes down to money again.
It's back in there though.
yeah,
Don't
okay,
worry about that.
good.
But I think it's important that this is showing us that it's not just the town needs to buy a new sweeper just because we wanna keep the streets clean. It's because we have to as a part of this requirement, or we're gonna get fined heavily for.
Right.
We could contract that out. We could hire a company to come in and sweep a couple times a year. Couple $100,000 for a sweeper, 50 or 60,000 each time they wanna sweep,
That's the better investment.
you know?
What's our return on investment the best?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll say 60, even if it was contracting out for 60,000, I'll take that any day over when we received an administrative consent order threatening 25,000 a day.
Right.
So that's why we're, asking, obviously, town meeting to consider this, putting it into an enterprise fund. So whether we're using it for contracting out, a bulk of the proposed budget is purchase services, just simply because we don't have the staff capacity at this point, but ideally building up the capacity, and then also building up those funding levels to make sure that we're constantly in compliance. So to answer your question about what's coming down the road, I think having funding in place to be able to work consistently with whether it's Weston and Sampson or we have someone in-house responsible for this, where we can, make sure that we're on top of our current compliance, our previous compliance, but also anything coming down, so.
The reason I asked you about that, thank you, was that part of the rating system CIPC does is it mandatory? And the question is, if it's required to have that done by the feds in the state, is that a mandatory issue? See what I'm saying? So I thank you for that input in terms of when we look at that when it comes to the committee.
So I hope this was helpful. Obviously, we'll be talking about the warrant, and I thought this was particularly important for you to get this on your radar before we kind of discuss that article, but also, hoping to utilize this segment. And thank you, Pat, and thank you, Jerice. Especially your input on the chat. You just did one more thing, just so I know she's putting a lot of effort in. The stormwater bylaws are very much on EPA's radar, and she strongly urges the town to get those adopted as soon as possible. Not only the bylaws, but also when we spoke with EPA, and we mentioned, this is prior to last town meeting, well, we've got the utility coming. And they said, oh, great, what's your funding mechanism? And yeah, we're not quite there yet. So it seems like they're paying attention to everything with respect to the permit and our compliance efforts. So I think this is a good demonstration to our federal and state partners that we're taking this seriously finally. So.
Thank you, Jerice. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate, and thank you, Chris. I appreciate all the work that all of you guys are doing and the presentation. It was clear. Is there a way that we can have the presentation either put on the website or something? Because I know it was really useful for me.
Yep.
And so I'm sure for the public, because it's, one of the talking points in town, right? We don't need to do it, we don't need to pay attention to it, but we do. And now we really do. And so why we're spending so much time and effort and need to look at funding mechanisms, and that these bylaws legitimately are important to get to not just get before town, but also passed and have the teeth for that also.
Definitely, yep, Austin and Chris and Tamika as well, they all have the PDF format of it, so feel free to post it on the website, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jory. Sorry we couldn't hear you. Does the board have any other for the this was the Board of Public Works kind of presentation for the stormwater utility that will lead into once we discuss the warrant. But does the board have any other conversation pieces right now? Thank you, Austin. Thank you. Did you wanna go back to your?
Yes, please. And also, within my update, I do have the ARPA, just a brief, just wanna be cognizant of the limited time, especially since we're talking about the warrant. So I merged the ARPA funds, just overall, very high level overview of ARPA in my presentation, if it's okay with the board. So in lieu of that as well, I'll be skipping the financial update, budget and finance update, because at the next meeting, I'd like to do the first quarter financial report for the board. So, oh, there we go. So just a brief overview of ARPA. So ARPA, as everyone knows, was signed into law. Town of Rutland received just over 2.6 million in funding. This was additional historic funding for cities and towns with an aim to reduce the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, whether it's public health, but also economic impacts. There was interim final rule and then a final rule from the US Treasury Department with several guidelines for what cities and towns can use this funding for. Previous select boards have allocated just over 2.2 million towards the following areas. So broadband infrastructure, water and sewer infrastructure, supporting the COVID-19 public health response, town buildings infrastructure, and then revenue recovery. Now you wonder what revenue recovery is. So initially when this was created, I think the federal government had anticipated that cities and towns were going to lose, whether it was tax revenue, in terms of property tax revenue, meals tax. But that, for many cities and towns, actually didn't happen. So the initial interim final rule was very restrictive. So you actually were not even allowed to use funds for anything other than quite literally whether it was infrastructure or supporting the public health response. Then they created this revenue recovery, and if your allocation is under $10 million, you can allocate essentially all of your COVID or ARPA money to what's called revenue recovery. It's essentially free cash. There's no restrictions on it. You can spend it however you please. It just hits your tax recap as free cash. So the board, previous boards allocated just over 1 million of that towards revenue recovery. And those were, various projects. So for example, our VADAR, or our transition to VADAR for accounting software, our recreation storage room in the basement of Town Hall. The process with recruiting me was paid for through lost revenue or revenue recovery. So there's still a little bit of funding that was unallocated, just about $400,000 was unallocated. But I just wanted to give a high-level overview of how much has actually been spent. So of the 2.2 million, only approximately 1.5 million of that has been spent thus far. So the balance, there's some projects that were allocated and there's been no action on. So for example, the secondary water source study, the board allocated some funds to pay for our upgrade to our fiber project, or fiber initiative. Those are still ongoing. So there's some projects that are ongoing, but also there's some projects that have not had any movement at all. So just about 1.1 million is either not allocated or not spent thus far. So just to give a quick overview, I won't read all of these, but these, sure.
Excuse me, of that 1.1 million?
Yep.
How likely is it, do you see, that those will be completed?
That's why I'm bringing this up. I think that I'd like the board at some point to take a look at some of the projects, and I'll send the list after the meeting of the projects. And I think it would be prudent at a future at a future select board meeting to take a look and get an in-depth kind of status on each of the projects, and consider maybe if we redirect some of the funds that were allocated to certain projects. I don't have recommendations right now. I have some thoughts, but no formal recommendations on some projects, especially where we've got, we're starting to work on the capital plan. I think ARPA would be a great opportunity to use some of those funds for some of the capital projects as well. There's some projects, just to mention the secondary water source study, that I think the board initially allocated 129,000. Recent estimates are right around 170,000, so costs have also increased for some of these projects. So I think it's a good opportunity to take a look again at all these projects and see kind of what's the best use of the remaining amount of funds. We still have just about 18 months or so to be able to actually spend all of this money. So we still have plenty of time to be able to do some things, but I think it's prudent for this board to consider, especially considering all the needs that we have from the town, overall town perspective.
Follow-up question?
Sure.
Of the revenue recovery, we've got 758 spent, we got about 300,000 left.
Yep.
of that 700 plus that's spent, did a lot of that go to help with our budgeting or our town fiscal problems?
The town meeting, previous town meeting used about 43,000 for this year's budget in ARPA funds. Some of the funds were used when Gary and I were dueling the town administrator position, so there wasn't a substantial amount of funds that were used for budgetary purposes, but
I think there was
certainly
one
some
year,
overall.
not this past year, the year before maybe, that the utility costs had really skyrocketed much, like midway through the year, much higher than what was anticipated in the budget. And so I think some funds were used for that year.
Yeah, so FY 22 and 23, the town did pay for fuel, electric, and gas expenditures. We're also currently using, to your point, Larry, we're also currently using ARPA to pay our Charter Spectrum monthly internet bill.
And
Trust me, I have a thought on that. I think certainly we shouldn't be using one-time funding sources for annual operating expenses, so as we're getting into the new budget process, my recommendation would be to take that back.
well, the reason I'm asking this is because if we use ARPA funds for this continuing stuff, that's not gonna do justice to our budget. We're not really gonna see because this is gonna go away at some point.
Yep.
And then we're really gonna have to see where our budget is in terms of what it's gonna cost the town. Everybody's told me, look, we did 2.5, okay, but I don't wanna see another one 2 years down the road.
Yeah.
So I'm concerned how we'll be putting that together using revenue recovery if we do for this year. That was my question on that.
If that was a question or a comment, I agree with it.
It's just,
And that's certainly something, when taking a deeper dive into ARPA, I was concerned to see that. I understand obviously the town was in a difficult position at the time and you had to use what you had for resources, but certainly not a best practice to use any sort of one-time, whether it's free cash, stabilization, for your annual operating expenses. So there's some efforts on, especially on the broadband side, to take back some of that infrastructure, and we believe that there'll be a significant decrease in our annual operating expenses. But certainly, not something that's solved overnight.
I'll let you solve that. I just had the basic question, thank you.
Well, but
Thanks.
Harry, I like your point in the sense of, I think this is one of the conversations we've been having, is trying to understand where we are and how best to use the remaining funds, whether that's the engineering and the pre-work to then have a bigger project or apply for grant opportunities or whatever, rather than initially, I think initially this was during those really, really tough budget years that we had.
Right.
A couple failed overrides and everything, and so it was really trying to we had ballooning expenses. I think snow and ice was a big hit the one year that came out of the revenue recovery also, because we weren't sure how free cash was even gonna fall out that year. So I definitely don't think it's best practice by any means, and I think hopefully with a new kind of face on how we wanna spend the remaining piece, we can be a little bit more intentional about it.
No, I agree.
And we weren't the only community that did that. I mean, ARPA was a once in a lifetime funding source for every city and town in the United States. And certainly, it was an easy funding source to just quickly pull from to solve whether it was a budget issue or a capital project. And certainly, especially when you're Rutland and you're only 2.6 million, it's under that $10 million threshold. It was so easy just to spend it. So, I can understand obviously with difficult budget challenges in the past. Why
No, I'm not arguing in the past, I understand that. What I'm saying is with what we have left and how do we effectively and efficiently use that money for the town?
Yes.
Get the best out of it.
Yep, absolutely. So I just wanted so these were the projects that were completed. There's some closeout balances for some of these. So certainly in the follow-up in that spreadsheet that I'll send you, you'll be able to see some of the projects. There's about $12,000 in projects that didn't utilize all of their allocation. So certainly we can allocate that $12,000 to other projects as well. So if there's any questions, any additional questions on ARPA, happy to answer those before I move on. So just wanted to put this on your radar, just for you to consider as we go to future meetings and start talking about other projects, whether it's stormwater and our requirements there or any other projects that we have to consider ARPA as an opportunity to accomplish those projects. Speaking of projects, we've gone to the parking lot, it's done. It actually is done. PJ Keating paved up the weekend, they paved on Saturday, and we had a line striping company here last night. They completed it, we actually gained 4 additional spaces with the new design. The design was completed with an effort to also improve the traffic flow flowing through. So you notice there's well, not a little bit, it's actually a very different layout than there previously was in Town Hall. We also moved the handicap parking spots to actually be close to the handicap entrance. So there's now 2 locations right in front of the community hall building.
Question, I was there looking at the parking lot, I noticed all the parking spots were in the middle. Are we gonna do any arrow signs saying, this is where you come in, this is where you go out?
Yeah, so the line striping company will not only do arrows to indicate where people, because parking lots I know get crazy when there's no direction. So they're working on the arrows sometime, probably one of the nights this week. Also, they'll be doing a crosswalk from the annex to Community Hall, just to kind of, for pedestrian safety there. And then they also did some line striping. You probably I saw some people were confused in the parking lot. We installed some additional handicap spots in the parking lot for the library. They restriped some of the parking spaces, and then they'll stripe the rest of the lot to formalize the parking configuration there as well. Miles Road, the water main project, the pressure testing was completed, and also the bacteria testing was complete. I believe they're starting to connect the services, is it this week?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
That's the latest plan.
On the bacteria testing, how close in compliance is that with the average of the town when you do your testing?
I couldn't tell you that, I'm not a scientist. All I know is when I saw the reports for everything they were testing for, they just used the word negative.
Okay.
They don't use percentages, right, it just said,
Well,
on
you
the
know how
test,
you send the report out every year? And
yeah.
all the stuff, I was just wondering how close or in compliant with it was that?
Yeah, the stuff that they're testing for, before we put that water line online,
Yeah,
it has to be free of certain things that they're, bacteria that they're testing for.
okay,
Everything came out negative.
okay.
Just one more, so I mentioned it just briefly at the end of the last select board meeting, but if you drive up to Uptown, which I'm still getting used to calling it Uptown, the Blair Pavilion has some lights that were installed. Thought this was a good initiative to kind of light up the town common, and also the beautiful asset that we have that is the pavilion that was donated by the Blair family. That's phase 1, there's phase 2, which is some string lights across the actual common to light up the rest of the common as well. I think it's a nice feature, and especially when we start to have more events, especially during the summer, I think it'll highlight the rest of the events that we have. And also, Tamika has been working very hard with our website company on the new town website. I believe we're still expected to go live next month, and she's been working with employees to schedule training for them to get familiar with the new website. We got a peek of the new website, and it'll look great. So can't wait to show that to the rest of the public. I think it'll be a great feature for accessibility, whether it's for your boards and commissions, town departments. There's a lot of information that we'll be able to put on there. It's a much stronger solution for us and our communication strategy. Sure.
Question. Will you be able to book committee meetings or meetings in rooms on the website?
Yes.
Okay. Because that's been a real bailiwick in the past.
Yeah, they have a facilities feature where you can see all the rooms and if they're reserved or not, and you can reserve them through one of the facilities modules.
All the rooms throughout the town?
Yep, as long as it's listed on the website, so it's a little work on our front to
Okay.
get it listed on there, but, and then also just on the scheduling part to make sure that we're staying on top of it, which we're doing anyways through various, some other tools, but the website I think will be a good resource for staff and the general public to be able to access those. So. And that is it for my update. Any questions?
Thank you, Tamika. Thank you, Austin, for, I know especially the website's been a long ongoing project, so thanks for all the time and effort and work, Tamika and Austin, on that. And the parking lot looks great. I was surprised to see the line stripe down here. I was like, what is going on?
I came down, they're gonna be surprised.
So thank you all for all of that work. And I know the Miles Road Water Project has been more surprises than we anticipated, so.
Hopefully this week, we have all the connections done. They plan on getting them all done in a couple days.
Awesome.
I believe there's only 13, 14, so we'll see.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody? Thank you, Austin. So then moving in to new business, we have a letter, Austin, I'll let you present it from the Devereux School, and address to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Every year, we're fortunate to, well, first and foremost, I think we have a great relationship with Devereux. They're obviously, as the community and the board knows, they're a national institution for behavioral health. I think we're lucky to have them as a partner here in the town of Rutland. Every year, they present the town of Rutland a gift. The gift varies each year. This year, they're presenting a gift of $45,000 to the town of Rutland, designating the funding towards the police department to be used at the discretion of the chief. Often this is used for supplies or training, and this is kind of in lieu of taxes, if you will, supporting their institution and the staff and the students at Devereux. So I want to thank Nadia, the executive director of Devereux, and the staff there at Devereux for their contributions to the community. Just one note about Devereux, they actually, if you have gone around the library, some of their students in their landscaping trade or class, if you will, spent some time the past couple of weekends cleaning up around the library, doing some landscaping. I think they have one more weekend where they're volunteering their time and some materials, I think thanks to the Department of Public Works, to clean up around the library as well. So I want to thank Nadia and her staff for that as well.
Nice.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I just want to, and again, I hope I don't come off sounding too petty by this. I appreciate it, I really do. But I feel the town earns every single penny of that $45,000. So I've always been, again, I appreciate it. I hope we keep a great relationship with them, but as somebody who worked as a police officer in this town, we earn every penny of that money and then some. So again, I hope I'm not coming off sounding too petty, but I've always kind of, as it being worded as a gift, I don't know, I've always felt a little squeamish about that, but that being said, I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I want to thank, for DPW for working with them, but also public safety, because I know that they spend a lot of time and outreach time also to try to make as positive an experience as possible for some individuals who don't have very positive experiences. So thank you for all the work that we do, and always looking for creative ways to continue to build on those relationships and to continue the positive aspect of things. So thank you, Austin.
I think we just need a motion to accept.
Oh, yeah.
Make a motion to, just accept the dollar figure, is that what it is? I make a motion to accept the $45,000 donation from the Devereux School.
Seconded.
Motion and a second. Additional comments, questions, concerns? Harry, roll call.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. Thank you, Austin. So we went through the Board of Public Works with the presentation from Weston and Sampson. And Austin covered the ARPA funds, kind of high level updates in his update. So we will segue into the street acceptance. We have a decent amount of documentation for the street acceptance for the adoption of order of layout for Nate's Way for acceptance at the special town meeting. So this is the recommendation that we would be putting forth, that it's placed as an article at the special town meeting. We have documentation from Quinn Engineering with concerns or issues that Quinn had found in April of this year, and then had gone back out and found additionally. And then there was some additional ones, and I think Chris reviewed them the end of September and believes that everything was found to be satisfactory as of October 10th, 2023. And we have a memo from Planning Board from their public hearing that they held recommending favorably the acceptance of Nate's Way as a public way, and the recommendation that it's placed as an article. So does anybody have any questions or concerns about the order of layout of Nate's Way or the process itself?
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Chris, how many more miles of roadway do you think we're gonna be picking up there for you to snowplow?
For that Nate's Way?
Well, it's gonna be more than that when it's finished.
Well, that's the only one that I know of right now that we're gonna be picking up this year.
Okay. Couple of 100 feet, couple of 100 yards?
Yeah, it's 500 or 600 feet deep, it's a cul-de-sac.
Okay.
I don't know. Just a question, if we can't answer it here, it's fine. Is there sidewalks on this street, and do we know what
I don't
the,
believe there are any sidewalks on that cul-de-sac.
are there any, this might be more of a planning board question, but regulations as far as putting sidewalks in for new streets?
I think that's a planning board thing, and based on subdivision rules and regulations, whether it's a subdivision or whether it's A&Rs or how they do it. I don't think that there's specific for this particular, but in general, I don't know that there's specifics.
I can't actually remember if there's a sidewalk on one side or not.
Yeah,
He knows.
yeah.
Peter Crane, Nate's Way. Yes, there is a sidewalk on one side of the
Yeah,
road, down
okay.
most of it until it hits the actual cul-de-sac entry.
Wasn't sure.
And that's generally through planning board, subdivision rules and regs, or if it's A&R, it's however they're negotiated with the developer or the builder or whatever.
Correct.
Thank you. And same with shade trees. I mean, it's commented in here that there were no shade trees found, but it was understood from the developer that a waiver for this requirement would be requested. So, yeah, and it was granted. So, trees, streetlights, sidewalks are all planning board stuff, right? So this is, the adoption of this would be, yeah, we would need to read the motion on the order of the layout of Nate's Way. And then this is also essentially saying that we're placing it on the warrant.
You'll still have to make a motion to place it on the
Right.
warrant officially, but yep, this is the official document that allows you to do that.
And sorry, just one more.
Yeah.
For Chris, I know you signed off on all this, but no concerns as far as other maintenance that hasn't been done, or like it's all set for you just to do what you need to do?
For a road that's as old as it is, it's in pretty good shape.
Okay.
It really is.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I would entertain a motion for the order of layout of Nate's Way. I think we need to read the
I was
entirety
gonna
of
say,
it.
does this need to be?
I think so.
How do you word that? A motion to approve the order, is that?
It's a motion to adopt.
adopt
Yeah.
the order of layout of Nate's Way. Whereas the select board of the town of Rutland, acting pursuant to General Law, Chapter 82, Sections 21 through 24, having deemed that common convenience and necessity require the acceptance Nate's Way as a town way, hereby lays out Nate's Way as a public way, all as shown on the plan referenced below. And whereas the boundaries of the layout of Nate's Way as hereby accepted are shown on the plan entitled As Built Plan Nate's Way dated September 29th, 2022, prepared by Finley Engineering Services, which plan was referred to the planning board and which plan is hereby adopted as a part of this order. And all land lying within the layout of Nate's Way is hereby laid out as a public way. The aforementioned plan is hereby forwarded to the town clerk for filing, and the foregoing layout is hereby reported to the town for acceptance.
Is there a second?
Second the motion.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
No.
Hearing none, roll call.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Ledger I.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you guys for everything. I know it's a lot of compiling documents and ensuring everything's tracked down, so thank you. Moving in to the special town meeting, review of the draft warrant is in our packet. Austin, do you wanna?
Sure. So we have 16 articles for the board to consider in this draft warrant. If it's okay with the board, I'd just quickly roll through each of the articles. There's also an explanation with each of the articles, something that I think was historically included in the motions document. Is that right?
No, we did include it.
We did, okay. So the reason why I'm saying include in the motions document versus others, you'll notice that this is, the format of this warrant is a little different than previous warrants. So for example, you see numbers on the warrant. Something that we thought was a good idea is to actually present numbers and figures for the voters in advance of town meeting, rather than seeing the motions document on the night of town meeting. We also think it would be prudent when the board decides their recommendations at your next meeting to also include that with each article as well. So I'll just quickly roll through. The Article 1 is from the Department of Public Works. This was something that was missed at the annual town meeting. Typically, there's approximately 30 to 40,000 from each water and sewer enterprise fund and retained earnings towards the annual budgets, just simply for emergency repairs, whether it's water main breaks or others. We're asking for a little bit more this year because there has a third filter at the water treatment facility was in need of dire need of a rehab.
It exploded.
It exploded. So that was a costly repair that we're seeking use of retained earnings to pay for that repair. Any questions on that one? The next two articles are from the Public Safety Department. The Fire Department is seeking a transfer from their Deputy Chief salary line item to their equipment line item. This is costs associated with the hiring of the new Deputy Chief, so paying MRI, the equipment in terms of his turnout gear. So the Chief is asking for $52,000 just for the costs associated with the transition. The Police Chief is also asking for $8,900, not associated with equipment, but just to pay for his portion of the MRI contract.
I have a question for
Sure.
these. I don't remember usually going to town meeting and approving account transfers like this, because this is within accounts. Usually we do those at year end, no?
Yeah, so, and the reason why we're doing it now, the reason why we're seeking to do it now is, we're still not even halfway through the fiscal year. We don't want each of the public safety departments to significantly deficit spend their line items, so we're asking for the transfer now, essentially just reappropriating from one line to the other.
And that needs to be done at town meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Question through the chair?
Yeah.
I guess I'm a bit confused. We knew we were in the process of hiring deputy fire chief. We knew that there was gonna be a cost to his gear. Why wasn't that gear allocated for in a separate line item so that we didn't have to take it out of deputy fire chief's salary?
We also knew that we weren't going to hire the deputy fire chief right away. I think this transfer was always intended to happen. Just the amount changed, candidly, Harry. I think they were looking to have a deputy fire chief coming in September. That is now happening in January. So to your point about the other things, whether it's the turnout gear and others, I think that's noted. The fire chief, I think, will note that, but he's asking for these funds for his land to also, cover any other associated costs. Fire department's probably one of the most expensive, other than DPW and their large equipment. So this was an amount that was indicated by the fire chief for his needs for the transition and also any other.
I understand that,
potential
I
expenses.
appreciate it. I still doesn't make sense to me. You're hiring X, the cost of X is gonna be Y. Some of that has to come from Y plus one. Why are we taking it all from Y? Did we not budget properly for the fire deputy chief's equipment and all the turnout gear and everything? That we have to take it from the salary because we didn't budget for that? We knew this was coming. Is there no line item for this stuff for the deputy chief for equipment and everything? Or is that the normal process? Is that we have these funds that are available and we're just gonna take from there and call it a day? I'm not sure I understand. I've been doing financial work for a lot of my life, and something like this doesn't add up. So what happened, I guess, is my question. Is this what the fire chief normally does? We anticipate things, but we don't allocate for it out of a separate item? Or is this something the budget does? I'm trying
Well, I
to
mean,
prepare my
so-
mind for this year's budget when we start getting it, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think oftentimes, especially where, preparing a budget is, depending on when you prepare it, is at best an estimated guess, right? So sometimes there are other costs associated with whether it's a transition, recruitment, obviously, is, recruitment of new employees. Sometimes the costs associated with that change than what you're previously budgeting. I think you have some documentation in your packet that was provided by the fire department that may explain in further detail, if these are included, you can provide. Harry, we can certainly take your question. Obviously, you're not voting on these tonight. We're presenting this informative draft. You have one more meeting to get those questions answered. I'd also like to encourage the public as we're rolling through this warrant. The reason why we're presenting it now is to ideally get questions received and answered well in advance of your recommendations meeting, so we're not spending several hours talking about each article in depth. Ideally trying to get that information out to the public well in advance of your recommendations meeting too. So I'll take your question and ask the fire chief for a follow-up.
I'll rephrase it, so maybe to make it easier.
Yep.
Why did we not allocate another $50,000 into the account for the fire equipment? Why did we not increase that so we didn't have to take it out of salary? Knowing we were hiring him before May's budget, May's annual.
Yeah.
That would be my question.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Okay, thank you.
So the next several articles are sponsored by the Assessor's Department, mostly related to abatements and exemptions. Now, there's some abatements and exemptions that we're currently doing that when digging in, Amy, the principal assessor, realized that we never actually accepted the provisions of general law. So Articles 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are all related to various abatements and exemptions. Some are related to veterans, so there's certain requirements that the assessor's office, there's some means testing, there's some documentation that's required from applicants of abatements and exemptions for property taxes and some other fees or taxes associated. So this is just accepting provisions of general law that allow for us to grant those abatements and exemptions. and those are granted through the Board of Assessors. So they're related to, seniors, to veterans, members of the blind community, and also there's some income, as well, that we do some means testing, and they have to provide some asset documentation as well. Any questions on any of those specifically?
Thank you to Amy and everyone for going through these, because I know that was one of the pieces for the override, is what for our really challenged residents, financially challenged residents, can be done. And so I appreciate the work going through MGL to figure out the avenues to which we could possibly offer some relief.
Yeah, the great thing about some of these abatements and exemptions are also supported through the Commonwealth as well. So just for example, the blind exemption, just under $100, $87 is paid from the Commonwealth in terms of our through our recap process as well. So some things that we should have taken advantage of for a long time in terms of resources from the Commonwealth. So I echo your comments. Kudos to Amy and Town Council for putting together this language to make sure that we're taking advantage of all the resources possible. So, any questions on the rest of those? Article 10 was a request from the Wachusett Regional School District Committee. This takes up a couple pages in the warrant, but it's an amendment to the district agreement, changing the language of section 1. I won't read all of these sections and these various sections, but it's essentially when I think the school committee was created, the concept of one person, one vote was I think the goal of forming the school committee. The town of Holden now has a weighted vote that's a little bit more, so I can't remember the exact percentage. Tamika, you may know it better than I. But each school committee member from the town of Holden actually has a little bit more than one vote. So they're looking to add a school committee member to the town of Holden to make that weight closer to 1. So that's a lot of language. Just for
So a lot
the
of
way it was
this,
explained was a simple change.
so a lot of this came from the restructuring that I think we approved at last annual town meeting, or was it 2 annual town meetings ago? To allow the reduction in school committee members from 20-something, I think, down to 16 or so. And in going back and redoing the math, they realized that the number of committee representatives from Holden was actually giving them more than, it was almost a 2 to 1 vote. And so by adding another member to Holden, that keeps everyone's vote as much closer to 1 than what it was before. And so it's just adding a member there. Everybody still has essentially equal say, except instead of it being close to a 2 for the vote, it's a 1. Because this is an update to the regional agreement, anything that happens, 4 of the 5 member towns have to vote to approve it. So Jen, if you have questions, or if anybody has questions, to read through it, and then we can ask for clarification through the district. It's, I saw it presented at school committee and it made as much sense as it can, but
I think it makes sense. I don't know that my question's really related to the warrant article itself. It's more just seeing the percentage of the district that is Holden versus every other town. It just seems very uneven, where Holden has a lot of high control.
Yeah.
Percentage of control compared to everybody else, so.
I mean, the town of Holden will make
there.
the argument that they're more than double the size of Rutland.
Population.
Yeah, exactly.
So of course, I think they're the largest stakeholder. I think that's why they're always gonna make the argument that they're.
Which I can understand. It just, like I said, I don't know that this is the right forum for this, but just everybody in Holden votes, and it's gonna have to be all the other 4 towns.
Right.
coming together to do something if they don't want to, and Holden does, it's just.
And it's not in fairness, but it's always been that way. Yeah, I mean,
I guess goes to the questions of the whole district and visualization thing. I said, I don't think it's related to this, just seeing it in the chart here, just
So they are
big question.
changing the dynamics by decreasing the number of the school committee members
that's already
They already
happened,
did.
yeah,
across
yeah.
the board.
They already did that.
already did.
I think all 5 towns voted in favor of that at, I believe it was last
I do
annual.
remember it, yeah. But they wanna add one more back to Holden.
To reduce the percentages.
I'm not sure I understand, but
They have some,
reduce what percentages? The voting percentages?
yeah,
Mhm.
yep. So they have some formula that they follow now based on the population and the percent of population in the district and everything. And how
Okay.
many school committee members from each town are there now. And because it used to be, I don't remember how they used to calculate it, it was 1 per however many students or something. And they tried to reduce it because having a committee of over 20 some is not an easy committee to work with, just scheduling and everything. And I still think 16 or 17 is a lot, so personally, but
I mean, I guess I like your comments, Jen. I don't know that much about it. You have kids in schools, you probably know more than I do on
Like I said,
that.
I mean, for the article itself, I understand what they're trying to do, that it makes sense. So I think my comments are not quite separate issue.
I mean, as we change and the
Yeah.
population of Rutland schools students increases, I think we should have more of a representation on the school committee.
Right, and I think that's something that we'll have to consider as the percentage does increase,
and I think they do
that needs to be
have
out.
avenue, it might not be in here, but there is, I think, an avenue once you hit a certain, and I don't know if it's percent of population or if it's population census, that then you get a school committee member added. Whether it's Rutland or whether Paxton or Princeton or Sterling has significant growth, or opposite, a community has significant
Right.
exodus from the schools, then, Holden or Rutland would be hit. I think there's a minimum number of members also as representation to the district.
How many members on the school committee are there?
16 right now,
Yeah.
total.
No, from
For us?
us. 3?
Yep.
And we're losing 1.
No,
I think there's,
Holden's just
Holden's
gaining.
getting one, they're
No.
going from 6
No,
to
no.
7.
but I think we currently have 4 right now, and I think we'll go down to 3.
So we're putting more students in Wachusett and we're losing less control. And we're losing more, we have less.
That's already been approved, that was already approved last year. This is only to add to give Holden 1 more member, to bring that weight per member from 1.16 down to 1.06.
From the
That's-
voting block standpoint?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
That's why I was saying I don't think it's, like I said, I have the questions, but it's not quite related to this, it's just more the town makeup of the district.
And with this new weighting, then Rutland would go up to 1.13 because of the way the percentages work. So at some point, Rutland would be probably potentially on the hook to be able to add a fourth back in. I mean, I think this is the year we lose one, I'm not 100% I can't
I mean,
remember.
I guess I have to read all the documents, but I don't know what good it would do. My only concern is the town of Rutland now, the citizens perceive us as overpaying our share to begin with. And now it's kind of like, yes, we're reducing it down to 3, so not only do we feel as a town, we're paying more for the students going there, but now we're also losing control, if you will, so we gotta somehow explain to them that our vote has increased and not really decreased. Cause that to me seems to be an issue out there.
Alrighty, Article 11 is, the Treasurer Collector's Office is asking for the acceptance of, section of Mass General Law that will allow them to post and advertise a listing of outstanding checks greater than $100, which have been outstanding for more than 1 year. If no claims are made on those checks within 1 year, the amounts will be reverted back into the town general fund. kind of a cleanup. Often Becky is going through some of those outstanding checks. This would allow for kind of cleanup on some of our checks that are issued. And of course, if that money is not claimed, then back into our general fund resources.
So we don't have to turn it over to the state, because I hadn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we won't find it on that Find Mass Money
Yeah.
website.
Do you find that 1 year's typically standard for something like that?
Yeah, and I think that's actually within general law as well.
Okay, oh, okay.
Article 12, as you recall, previous town meeting allocated funds towards the electrical upgrades at Naquag Elementary School. There's a shortfall of just under $10,000, I believe it's $9,100. There was a previous article for the library project for the 3 rooftop units, HVAC units. That project has been complete and there's an outstanding balance remaining of just over $10,000. We're seeking to transfer the sum of $10,430.26 to pay for the final costs associated with the Naquag Elementary School. You recall we, in a previous update, we recently bid that project. It's under budget. We have enough resources with this transfer, and the project should be completed sometime, I think early next year, I believe, Chris, right?
Excuse me?
For the Naquag electrical panel upgrades. I believe it's still looking to do it when the school's closed during the winter sometime.
I believe that's the last, Seth is kind of on top of that one.
Yep.
And I believe that's what they said. Then couldn't get, they're waiting for parts, I believe, and they couldn't get everything to get it done.
Yeah, so there's a pretty substantial lead time on some of the components for that project, so.
Electrical controls are really hard to get.
Yep.
Are they out of sight in price too? Are they out of sight in price too?
Absolutely.
I mean, there's roughly about a 10% increase in here from our original quote. That's what I'm asking.
And the lead time is crazy on it.
Any more questions on that one? Article 13 speaks to the presentation that from Weston and Sampson earlier. This is the proposed budget for the stormwater utility for the remaining fiscal year 24. You'll notice this is approximately half of the budget that was presented last year. So this would just to cover some of the expenses associated with stormwater for the remaining of this fiscal year. What would follow a positive vote from town meeting would be the Board of Public Works setting the fee, and the fee would be levied across, so there's actually, we need to fix this explanation, not across water and sewer ratepayers, but across all property owners. So it'd be approximately 2,000, just over 2,000 parcels in the town of Rutland that would receive the approximate fee of just over $17 per quarter that would fund this $114,000 for the budget. And this would be included on the tax bills, the quarterly tax bill as well.
What is a stormwater benefit allocation?
That is essentially some indirect charges for our DPW staff to pay for some of the admin work from the Department of Public Works.
Little extra in case something happens.
Candidly, I think
we don't wanna get into a situation where we have to transfer money.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at
I
that.
think I actually wonder if this was printed before we made that change. Do you know? Because it also includes the indirect charges.
Yes, it was probably printed before the change, yeah.
Yeah. So we actually made a modification. We actually boosted the purchase services, recognizing some of the quotes that were received from Weston and Sampson.
From the 290?
Yep.
Okay.
So it actually should be 6,500 to go to, so it should be 96,500.
So this will be more than 114?
No, it's just shifting from indirect
shifting.
charges and
Okay,
water
I see.
benefit to purchase
So it
services.
should be 90,000 is the right number for,
No, it should be 9650,
okay.
So
96,500, sorry.
And then that gets rid of the indirect charges and the
And the water
benefit
benefit.
allocation.
Yep,
Okay.
that was a Joe Buckley creative title.
Thank you, okay, I just,
but looking at the explanation, it's essentially indirect charge, costs.
And you expect that amount will cover will get us where we need to be in
No.
compliance for June?
No,
No,
it
okay.
won't. We'll be seeking additional funds, I believe, through ARPA, to pay for the compliance efforts, but the point
Okay.
is we need to get something
Something in
started,
there?
to get people
Okay.
familiar with. So we essentially took the $228,000 budget that was presented at the previous, to the previous select board at a cost of the $17 per parcel per quarter. We split it in half, so this will put some funds and we can use this to offset some of those costs, but it certainly won't get us completely in compliance.
I guess
Is,
just,
is this a thing that's been held over for a couple of years? This is something that maybe should have been done 2 or 3 years ago?
More than 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay, so, all right.
Yeah.
Kinda like our water and sewer problem that we had before on our accounts. Things should have been done, all right.
Yep.
Is there I know for the water and sewer, we had a pretty significant rate study done to kind of base where we're going and where we should be and to justify the yearly increases, because we used to not do yearly increases. Is there a similar kind of rate study or opportunity to justify, because I assume the Board of Public Works then in the new fiscal year is going to have to set a new rate for this. Is there going to be a mechanism, like a data-driven mechanism to show that this is why, that these numbers are true and needed and just not arbitrarily?
Yeah, so very similar to the water and sewer budget, the rates are based off of the budget amount. But that, you raise a great point about the rate structure. So Town of Shrewsbury, for example, has a very complex rate structure. So residences pay $90, whereas the Market Basket Plaza pays $7,500. And it's based off of, I think, a calculation of the impervious pavement that's on their particular parcel. I think at some point we can get to that complicated rate structure. I don't think we have the resources at the time to do a comprehensive study on kind of the difference between residential and commercial properties. I think the point is establishing a fee structure, put some resources into this utility, which would allow us to potentially do a more complex rate structure down the road.
And show EPA and DEP that we're making we're trying to do something.
So that rate structure, could that be accomplished through the stormwater bylaw we're working on? Or policy, or?
Possibly through the bylaw. I think just in terms of our annual, putting together the budget and identifying, proper rate structure, right? I mean, the rates need to support the budget. So however the Board of Public Works wants to, spell out the differences between potential parcels, I think that's something that we can prepare in terms of a proposal, but we just need to make sure we have the resources to conduct the work.
I mean, I
Okay.
think it's water and sewer is a little bit different because there's not a huge delineation, it's more it's based on usage versus impervious pavement or whatever. We don't have, commercial wise, we don't have huge areas of large parking lots, it's, so I'm not sure how much that's feasible or not.
Rate structure, you mean?
Yeah, and similar to when we set the annual tax rate in December, we don't usually, there's the analysis generally is that there's no cost benefit to having a separate commercial versus residential. The offset would be so high that we would be driving commercial out in order to realize any sort of savings on the residential tax. So I think there's a lot of pieces to consider for sure, but I just wanted to get it on the radar because, I was on the board the first couple years and we didn't raise water and sewer rates forever. And then we had the rate study done and kind of justified, like, we need to be doing this. It's the cost of doing business and everything. And so just that there's some sort of teeth behind what we're doing. I mean, I know Weston and Sampson, DEP, EPA, DPW, everybody has it, but to formalize it, that we're.
Yeah, this is just a start. I mean, once we build up this program and this utility, I think we'll be able to do a lot more work on everything that Pat and Therese had mentioned in terms of our requirements, but also just kind of building out that overall infrastructure this utility will help greatly with. Article 14th is is to formalize the street acceptance that the board just voted on for Nate's Way. Good thing about that, adds to our chapter 90 allocation, so some more funds coming our way for chapter 90. Any questions on that one?
I would just encourage to have the backup documentation that we had tonight, because there's always questions at street acceptance, like what were the issues, were they all resolved, is there anything outstanding? I think planning board and select board have been trying to not have anything outstanding. If it needs to be done, it needs to be done before we place it. And I think that the past couple cycles have been good about that, but just, it's always a question that comes up at town meetings, so we have that documentation.
The final two articles are sponsored by the planning board. Article 15 is related to the kennel bylaw and the zoning bylaws with respect to kennels. So it expands the zones in town where kennels may be located and aligns kennel special permit requirements with the animal control general bylaw, where personal kennels do not require a special permit. Something the planning board has been working on and has to be included on this warrant. Any questions on that? And the final is to formalize an associate planning board member bylaw through Mass General Law, zoning bylaws, you're allowed to have an associate member where necessary to vote on special permit applications only when the elected members are not available or choose not to vote, whether it's through abstaining or some other practice of not voting.
And both of these are, the associate member is also a 2/3 vote?
Yes, because it's a change to the zoning bylaw.
Question on Article 15. We are gonna be working on an animal control bylaw. Is this kind of superseding that for us?
So this would be a zoning bylaw, and we're not really touching zoning bylaws in our bylaw review. I mean, we look at them, but zoning bylaws go through the planning board zoning bylaw committee, subcommittee, right, to me, like my words are right, correct?
But I think there might be
Bylaw guy is
there might be a kennel issue on that, if Peter can help us.
I'm sorry, what's your question? I didn't hear part of it.
Animal control bylaw that we're working on. Does it have a
We have one, yes.
Huh?
We have one.
It has kennel issues in it?
The general bylaw specifically says that personal kennels do not require special permits. Our zoning bylaw, as stated right now, say that all kennels require special permits.
Okay,
So one of the changes is to align those two, to remove the special permit requirement for personal kennels.
okay. Which is what the one we're working on already says,
Yes.
personal, okay, cause I didn't know how those two tied together. Okay,
Yeah, there was a conflict between them, nobody noticed it.
okay.
Is there a definition for what constitutes a personal kennel?
Yes, it's all defined in Mass General Law.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, I'm good on that.
So I think that this is kind of our first C of these, and if you wanna take them with you and kind of look at them, I know some of them are a lot more cumbersome, the school one especially. So if you wanna take some time, research it, have questions, get answers, whatever, and then at our next meeting, we can hopefully similar to this, kind of go through them quickly and vote to place. And then I think FinCom is going to attend also that meeting and make their recommendations at that meeting also. So we can cover.
So my only question on placement would be, we've spent a lot of staff time in legal review on this draft warrant already. Candidly, the practice of placing is an odd one in other communities. I think we'd respectfully be asking the board to finalize the warrant at the next meeting and then to make your recommendations. Tamika has spent a lot of time, especially preparing this warrant. I'd hate to waste her efforts, but also, we spent some funds on legal review as well. So certainly I think we can go through each article, but I think the practice of previous boards of a motion for placing each article is something hopefully in the future we can get away from. And we're just, a motion to finalize the warrant and make the recommendations would be something I respectfully ask on behalf of town staff.
Okay, and the placement of the articles as we see them is the way the placement you expect to go through?
So I would defer to Tamika on how these were strategically placed? I don't know, was there a,
So usually the format that we follow is street acceptance and bylaw changes are the last items on an agenda, a warrant. The other ones don't have a specific rhyme or reason to them. I will say that town council had a very quick turnaround and these have actually already been reviewed and finalized by town council. So the language you have in front of you is good to go.
Good to know, okay.
and if there's a question from the board or from perhaps another board or committee or just a member of the public, what are the motions? Essentially add I move to each of these articles, so we're also looking to spend less time creating essentially two separate documents. Tamika spent a lot of time, especially at the annual town meeting, preparing the warrant and then also spending equally the same amount of time, if not more, on drafting the motions. So looking to make this a little bit more of an efficient process for this special town meeting and future town meetings as well. That's why we're including the figures and some other information to make the voters more informed.
Yeah, I wasn't arguing on the Article 2. I was just curious as to why we didn't do it.
Yep.
I mean, you have to transfer the money, so that's where it's coming from. I was more curious as why it was done that way. Okay.
I'll get that for you, Larry.
If I may,
Yeah, go for it.
I'd also like to say I'm extremely appreciative of you adding the dollar numbers in here. That was a very big frustration for me as a resident going into every town meeting and not knowing how much was gonna be asked for,
Right.
where it was coming from, until the day I had to vote on it.
Right.
And I couldn't really do any research or formulate comments that I wanted to make on it, so I very much
Yep.
appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you, Austin
And
and
thanks
Tamika.
Tamika for all her work on this as well.
Are you looking for a raise?
So, I don't think we need a motion or anything for this tonight, but this is just, I appreciate having the opportunity to kind of see it and digest it, go through it quickly, not so quickly, but kind of quickly, and digest it, and then,
You think I was brief?
we had questions,
That
no, it was
wasn't bad,
good.
that wasn't bad.
I tried to be quick.
No. So next on the agenda, we have the special election warrant. We need to vote to sign the warrant for the November 7th election. And Tamika, I don't know, do you have the signature form that we can just read the motion, like, thank you, sorry. So this is the election, the November 7th election. Federal, I think this year it's especially state, but
Just for that one.
right, it's for the office to replace Senator Ann Goby since she moved.
Thanks, guys.
Good night, thank you
Good
guys.
night.
Thank you.
Since she moved in under the administration, so we need the motion to sign the warrant.
Is there anything on here that needs to be read for the motion?
I don't believe so. I believe you're just making a motion to sign it.
Oh, okay.
You could just say sign as presented.
Okay. I'll make a motion to sign the warrant for the November 7th special election as presented.
Second.
Let this sign now.
No discussion?
Questions, comments? Go for it. Harry?
Second, aye?
Matt's and I.
Ledger I.
Galvin, aye?
Whitman, aye. Thank you. So we have future meetings, the 26th.
It's my birthday.
Um,
day for my birthday?
so I think we schedule bylaw on the 23rd, I think, right? Yeah. No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't going crazy.
Yeah.
So Monday, the 23rd, we will have our, a bylaw review. I believe we're probably going to be looking at town council. I'm not 100% sure. I think that's where we
Yeah.
left off.
Yeah, legal.
Yeah, legal, yep. And then October 26th will be, like I said, I think I got word from FinCom that they will be having a joint meeting that night. So that will be for the official placement of the warrant articles that we just went through for the special town meeting and the recommendations. And my understanding is that FinCom will also be making their recommendations that night as well. And then our next scheduled meeting would be October 30th, the night before Halloween. And then we would be looking into November. So is there any other business to come before the board before we adjourn into executive session? So then I would take a motion to adjourn into executive session for reason number 3. And I can let someone, it's on the,
The motion to enter into executive
Sorry.
session and adjourn from executive session for the purpose of, or
to
to,
not return to open session,
Right.
to adjourn from.
just for the purposes of
Right,
return. Yeah.
right. So, but we need the reason read as to why we're, yeah.
Going into executive session.
Oh, sorry. I make a motion to adjourn to executive session and to return.
No, to enter to executive
To enter
session
into executive session
for reason number 3.
for reason number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have had a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. MCAD.
Yep.
Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination complaint.
To,
To then
And to
reach,
adjourn from executive session,
to adjourn into executive
to
session.
adjourn from.
from executive
From
session.
executive session.
So we have a motion, is there a second? I'll second. Motion's in a second, roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you.